China Watch Radio is brought to you in part by Sushi Market Sprouts on 7th in Santa Cruz and Kaito in the Capitol Mall Food Court. Treat yourself to the finest Japanese cuisine you'll find anywhere with fresh sushi to go and delicious ramen dinners. Sushi Market Sprouts and Kaito. Yum!
好，同学们，我们在轰轰烈烈的站起来，站起来。You know, a few years ago, ladies and gentlemen, affairs of state were proceeding as before throughout the Pacific Basin. Business as usual. China was selling America all its stuff, and America was giving China all its money.
Yep.
But then, President Donald Trump, being the author of The Art of the Deal, said, this is no deal at all, and threw a bunch of tariffs on China, and so much for business as usual. Now we appear to be engaged in unrestricted warfare with China throughout the Pacific Basin and the world. And yes, a line has been drawn in the water that leads us to ask, which country in the Pacific do you think China needs to establish its hegemony? Welcome to the Line in the Water edition of China Watch Radio.
How do you draw a line in the water? That's what I want to know.
Well, that's
where the ripples go, right?
I guess where the ripples go.
So, welcome today. We have Up in the Trees, Jonty McCollier's with us. Jonty, hello.
Hello, everybody.
How are you doing up there? Is it warm?
It's warm. It's quite warm.
It's hot. Come on, the word is hot.
Okay, I'm melting.
All right. And we have Billy Graff here running the boards and running everything else at once, all at the same time.
Yes, it's a little cooler in the booth, but I walked outside a little while ago. It's kind of hot.
It's kind of hot.
It's getting better, though.
And David, you know, you're down there on the beach on the cool section of Santa Cruz County. Was it hot down there?
No, it was beautiful down there in La Silva and Left
shut
up.
Yeah. There you go. And yours truly, Michael Olson. Well, today, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take a look at the line in the water of the Pacific Ocean. You know, if you were to open your Tales from a Tin Can by this guy named Michael Olson and turn to page 21, you would see what the area dominated by Japan in 1941 before World War II. And if you look at its strategic positions that it has established in 1941, and then you turn to page 85, and you see the area dominated by Japan in 1 year later in 1942. Look at that, gentlemen.
Amazing expansion
amazing.
of territorial control.
It's just huge.
It looks familiar, doesn't it?
It looks real familiar. And it looks exactly like the steps China is taking to draw its line in the Pacific Ocean. And so today we're going to pretend like we're playing three-dimensional chess with the CCP boys and girls in Beijing, and we're going to ask ourselves, which country would we like to, what's the word they use, capture?
Yeah.
So that we can establish hegemony throughout the Pacific.
Later on in the program, I'll be talking about the president, our president, current president, talking to some places I've lived.
Wow.
It'll be interesting.
Yeah. So that's the subject on the table today. And of course, in the second hour, that subject is all yours. Which country do you think you would want to take over in order to establish hegemony?
If you were China.
If you were China, yeah. We're thinking like the CCP today.
We're sitting in Beijing and we're looking out over the Pacific.
Yes.
Yeah.
Does that mean I'm locked in a room somewhere?
Yeah.
Of course. Your COVID protocols.
Tethered to a transmitter as usual.
So first up today, we have our news of the week, and starting us off, we have David, who's going to be talking about, what the heck are you talking about?
Well, I got a couple of really
NVIDIA?
amazing stories. One is the U.S. officials order NVIDIA to halt sales, and AMD as well, of AI chips to China. This is pretty big. Also, I've got an interesting story about some new PSYOPs operations over Taiwan for the CCP.
Wow. Fire away.
Yeah.
Let's get it started.
Well, it's interesting. I'll start with the NVIDIA. The NVIDIA is actually really interesting. As for folks understand, just for me, for lay people, they make a product called a GPU, which is a graphic processor unit. And there's two dominant players in that business. There's AMD and NVIDIA. And both make very competitive products. Well, it's an amazing chip for rapidly moving data from one place to another. If you think about it, if you've got a megapixel computer screen with lots of color depth and you want to move at motion picture type speed, you've got to have incredible processor power to move all of that content, that rich content, across the screen in real time. Well, it actually had a secondary purpose. It turns out for artificial intelligence, we need to move data and we need to compare and contrast data. So a lot of algorithms for AI are built on comparison algorithms, based on comparison analysis.
If this does this, then that does that.
Exactly. These four things, one of them doesn't belong here. They're Sesame Street
Right.
type of thing. Well, these chips are becoming very, very sophisticated, and they're now at the core of a lot of data centers to help manage and move data. But they're also now, of course, becoming the core of AI. And these chips are becoming smaller and increasingly powerful. And you can actually gang them together in parallel fashion into a weave them, if you will, into a tapestry.
Pretty soon you have an electronic brain.
There you go, Billy. That's exactly right. So these have incredible military applications, as you can imagine. So, what we're seeing currently commercially with AI is things like pattern recognition. We heard a lot about, for example, facial recognition, where you can have, petabytes of data.
Here's an easy way for our audience to remember it. Remember when Watson won on Jeopardy?
That's right.
Because it could calculate different answers very quickly. Yeah. That's what we're talking about.
That's right.
We're talking about a really advanced Watson.
Exactly. And so you can actually build machines that have some level of intelligence to them. A lot of the computers that were playing chess, to your point, Watson was the first computer to actually win a game based on strategy, not brute force analysis of every permutation based on every move. But these chips have a lot of application in the military. And so the U.S. government is now actually putting a halt to the trade of these chips. And by the way, they've also told AMD that you can sell some older versions of the chips, but you can't sell the new stuff and the new stuff that's coming out next, because it's just too damn powerful.
This we talked about unrestricted warfare, and which is something we believe, or at least I believe, that China has been conducting against the United States for a couple decades.
Yes.
And now we appear to be fighting back.
Well,
or am I wrong?
No, I think that you're seeing, as we've been reporting, a recapturing of critical manufacturing capacity back to the United States. We also reported that there's billions of dollars now that are being spent on helping to repatriate semiconductor manufacturing back onshore to the U.S. as well, because obviously the situation in Taiwan can get a little tenuous.
Lots of money being spent to build those plants here in the United States.
Of course, the Chinese, of course, always the victim, have said on Thursday that they're accusing the United States of attempting to, quote, impose a tech blockade on China. So, denying our access to our technology for them to come back and maybe kill us at some other future point.
So they're complaining because we won't give them our technology free, as they have been getting it
anymore.
And
they accuse us of destabilizing global supply chains with this move.
Okay.
Which I find...
So we bad.
We're bad, exactly.
We bad.
So, we've actually... there's been a lot of movement in NVIDIA. It's been a really high-flying stock. It's been very popular on Wall Street for investors. I think recently we saw the news about Paul Pelosi doing some insider trading ahead of the deal. He was accused of doing insider trading ahead of the deal of forming the billions of dollars investment of repatriating the manufacturing back onshore. So this is a company to watch. They do have an interesting technology. They are kind of at the zeitgeist of, at the leading edge of artificial intelligence. I think there's going to be more here to look as we look down the road.
It's really interesting also that the video started out as a gamer, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Gaming chip.
Because it's a chip for graphic illustrations.
That's right.
It is.
And thus the need for ever more power. Yeah.
And those types of chips now are being used in automobiles.
They
A
are.
lot.
They are a lot. In fact, they're used in Teslas. Which is just kind of a punchline on this. China's talks to us for destabilizing global supply chains with this move. But about 10% of NVIDIA's chips are actually sold into China's data centers. So it's not...
I bet it's higher than that.
It could be. The challenge is going to be watching this, trying to acquire these chips through third parties.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have, as you guys know, I have a whole long career in Silicon Valley, and one of the things, the friends of mine who work in audit, and I have another friend in the Commerce Department who said, straw companies purchasing and transacting these types of sales is sometimes difficult to track. But eventually it is a paper trail, but oftentimes you don't find it until the transaction is well established and
the chips are on the
already in hands.
machines.
Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, good.
Let
That's
the chips fall where they may.
and so we just learned where in TikTok is
this
fully
is scary.
capable of collecting every keystroke you
Yes.
make on your computer.
If you've brought TikTok up, you're already
toast.
That's right.
I was going to say something else, but fortunately you said toast first.
Well, there's a number of applications that fall into that bucket. What people don't realize, a lot of the antivirus software comes from the Eastern
right.
Bloc countries. They also record all your keystrokes, so they know all your passwords. They know everywhere you've been surfing. They know, anything they want about you.
So
That's why you
forget
don't
about
type
it.
out your passwords. You copy and paste them. Little tip.
Exactly.
Say that one more time.
I said that's why you don't type out your passwords. You copy and paste them.
And then as soon as you paste it, you immediately copy some random word like the or something into the copy buffer, because that can also be taken by this software.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Well, good luck, folks. I suppose you all did that like I did.
Sure.
Right? Uh-huh. So anything else, David?
Well, I can cover the PSYOPs. We can do that in the next hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pick up the PSYOPs
Speaking
next
of
hour.
jaunty,
Speaking of jaunty, you're up. Batter up, big guy.
Yeah, well, there's the good old march towards the digitalization of currency, and there was an interesting article published in The Economist that I couldn't get to because it was behind a paywall. So I found something else on in a publication called the Daily Sabah, which is a publication out of Turkey, of all places. Also talking about how the People's Bank of China has been pushing for some time to develop and make widely adopted digital currency for the Chinese yuan. This whole machination, it's actually kind of interesting to read this article because there's this sort of blind spot wherein they keep talking about how a digital currency is very sort of threatening. We've got this gentleman named Alex Gladstein, Chief Strategy Officer at the Human Rights Foundation, who is really concerned about the dangers of a central bank digital currency to financial freedom and privacy, especially in somewhere like China. Now, China doesn't have the same sort of institutional concepts that the United States has, so fundamental freedoms, human rights, things of that nature, although China, of course, claims that it does. The sort of slippery slope situation here is that we've got folks like Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board, saying a digital dollar would really be a great thing, but a digital yuan is a major threat to human rights. So the use of a digital currency allows for a variety of potential abuses. One being that every single purchase can be tracked. It also is potentially programmable. So every single purchase can potentially be disapproved. You're not allowed to buy that because
That would be kind of analogous to China's social credit system.
It would be
if you're
an acceleration of that exact system.
Yeah.
Now, China already has uses WeChat and WePay attached to WeChat as a form of de facto digital currency. an inordinate proportion of transactions in China, everything from paying somebody to walk your dog to paying your meal at a restaurant, is actually handled by WeChat. I have a good friend who's in the credit card processing industry, and he talked about how he was able to set up his clients with the ability to process WeChat. And all throughout the South Pacific, Australia included, there are businesses that accept WeChat payments. So you walk into a hotel, for instance, in Sydney, with your phone, and you just use your phone to pay via WeChat. And I don't remember the details, but as he described it to me, it was a very simple system.
Sure.
Compared to some of the rigor that that Visa and MasterCard would put somebody through.
Although, I recently had the opportunity to buy something at a local convenience store, and I was surprised to see that I had already paid.
Because they read the irises in your eyes.
It read my card without me taking it out of my wallet.
Yeah, can do.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's sort of the same thing you're talking about here already.
Okay.
Yeah, so the extent to which this this arrival of digital currencies is going to have a major effect, it's difficult to say. One of the things that this article notes is that the digital Silk Road, which is the companion to the Belt and Road adventure that CCP China has been engaged with for quite some time, is focused on trying to pressure the adoption of a variety of digital technologies, Internet of Things stuff, but that also includes this digital currency concept. And they do mention in the article that Huawei, much disgraced and maligned, in spite of everything, has some 90 agreements signed in the first 2 months of this year. And that almost 50 of these were signed with European companies. Mm-hmm. So it does seem that there's an aspect of this digital expansion that's continuing, not so much affected by the political pressure the United States has been exercising there.
That is a subject we're going to be picking up more in the second hour.
That's right.
So hang on to that. Billy, you're up.
I am. Look, we saw with spectacular media coverage a non-launch at NASA last week. There was a hydrogen leak, and they scrubbed it twice. And
I have those.
And then they just decided to scrub it for a couple of weeks to get it all squared away. Okay, and better safe than sorry. It's a giant rocket. They're trying to get the thing to orbit the moon. And anyway, so I bring that up because China recently launched a very mysterious spy satellite. Now, China, of course, is also working to get to the moon. They're also working on their own space station. They're doing a lot of stuff in space. Remember Space Force? Well, Space Force is actually up and running, and it's following stuff in space. And they have now noticed that this China spy satellite is a new version of a new satellite, and China is saying that it will monitor land, crop yield, and natural disasters. That's what China says this new satellite is going to do. The guys at Space Force and NASA are going, nah, we don't think so. We think it's going to gather military intelligence. The analysts are all saying that this is not going to monitor crop yields.
So they're going to monitor like natural disasters over Area 51 or something like that.
Who knows?
There you go.
There's really not much else to say about this because it's a spy satellite. We're still gathering intelligence on this thing, but
we're spying on the spy satellite.
It's the Yaogan 33, which is a new classified series of remote sensing satellites being run by Chinese state-controlled space
using
technology.
chips made by NVIDIA.
Unfortunately, you're probably
Touché.
right.
There you go. Okay, and I'll finish up the this segment of China Watch Radio with an article about China's efforts to establish a base in Cambodia.
Cambodia.
So we learned recently how they established a base in the Solomon Islands.
Oh, yeah.
And talking back to the opening of this show, and we talked about Japan's sphere of influence throughout Western Pacific prior to World War II, and how China appears to be marching in those exact footsteps. Now, how did they approach Cambodia? Well, Cambodia has a naval base at Ream, which is not very up-to-date. As a matter of fact, too shallow to harbor major ships, doesn't have any communications devices, doesn't have even a hospital, doesn't have much of anything. So,
Opportunity.
China is going into the Nîmes naval base and saying, no problem, we'll completely update your naval base, we'll lend you the money. All right,
Or have you heard this
10% interest, and
Sounds familiar.
And we'll build you a new naval base. So that's exactly what they're doing. Now the U.S. says, "Wait a minute, you can't do that because that's not really what you're doing. What you're really doing is stealing Cambodia's naval base." But depends on who you bought off, right? So they go to the U.S. Naval Defense goes to Cambodia and says, we want to see. And Cambodia says, no, you can't see what we're doing here. Well, of course, we can see by satellite, so we know what they're doing. But Cambodia will not allow U.S. Into the base to see what's going on, of course, at the suggestion of the Chinese. And this exact same thing happened a week or so ago in the Solomon Islands.
That's exactly
The
right.
Solomon Islands turned away a Navy Coast Guard ship prosecuting illegal fishing.
And an Australian ship as well.
Yes.
Yep. Oh, I didn't know that.
So while the U.S. delegation went there to see, the delegation at least set up some meetings, and they looked at a new building, and they went over here. This really reminds me of when the World Health Organization did a fact-finding mission to Wuhan Virology Institute.
Yeah.
And the Chinese showed them the bathroom and the broom closet, and that was it.
Yeah, you never got to see the third story.
Yeah, no COVID there in the closet.
So what we have here is a classic Chinese Belt and Road situation where China lends Cambodia the money to build a Navy base. Cambodia can't pay the money back. China takes over the Navy base, just like that. Now, what really boggles my mind is where is the United States of America?
And there's a couple of questions involved in this, too.
Why are we allowing, or are we not, why are we not standing up to this? It seems as though China is now running amok throughout the Pacific, and we are doing nothing.
At least in Asia.
Well, what about our own hemisphere?
Now there's a couple of
Okay,
questions.
so there's more. And we have a break
You want
here.
to take that up
Yeah.
later? All right. Well, we'll take our break.
I think you're going to highlight some issues in our own hemisphere in the next half hour.
Yes, all right. We're going to talk about Nicaragua.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. All right, we'll be right back on China Watch Radio. Satisfy your hunger right now with the delicious ramen and sushi you'll find waiting for you at Kaito. Easy in and out location in the Capitola Mall food court. Special orders welcome. Fresh, delicious, and oh so good.
This is Koji. I'm looking forward to seeing you at my restaurant, Kaito.
Hey there, everybody! Excitement's in the air. Family fun for everyone. The Santa Cruz County Fair.
You've waited all year, and it's true. The fair is coming. From Wednesday, September 14th through Sunday the 18th, the Santa Cruz County Fair once again becomes the best place to be. Everything you love, the animals, the rides, the food, and entertainment throughout the grounds, including your favorites like Michael Mesmer, Master Hypnotist, and Twinkle Time, plus new additions, Flo the Clown, Jeremy the Juggler, and the magic of Frank Thurston. Opening night kicks off the nightly entertainment with monster trucks and motocross on the racetrack. And local favorite, the Gary Blackburn Band on the main amphitheater stage. Check online for details and tickets at SantaCruzCountyFair.com.
The Santa Cruz County Fair.
Mow, dig, haul, lift. The versatile Kubota BX Series subcompact tractor does it all. Switching attachments is simple, and a smooth hydrostatic transmission makes for easy operation. The Kubota BX Series, the #1 selling subcompact tractor in the U.S. for over 10 years. Talk to your local Kubota dealer today to schedule a demo. Go to KubotaUSA.com for full disclaimer.
C&N Tractors in Watsonville and Paso Robles makes it so easy to get a Kubota. Give us your tough jobs.
I'm Charles Friedman. Before you turn on that air conditioner up to max, give a thought to the safety of all the electrical circuits that keep you cool. Best way to check on the safety of your electrical circuits is with the help of Chris Jensen and the staff at JM Electric. Chris, what should we be watching out for?
Thanks, Charles. It is really important to be mindful of the electrical circuits that power air conditioners. Any electrical leak from these circuits is a real fire danger. You may not be able to see the electricity leaking from the circuits behind your walls, but JM Electric's state-of-the-art testing equipment can find them. And JM Electric is happy to help folks out with a free home assessment to see if the current safe testing service is right for your home. Give us a call at 422-7819.
Go straight to jmelectric.com and take the home electric safety test. After you answer 12 yes or no questions, you'll have a good idea about how safe to feel. If you don't feel safe, call JM Electric and ask for a free current safe home assessment. That's JM Electric at 422-7819. You'll sleep well at night.
To some, a baby's babbling doesn't mean much, but it does. Especially if there's no babbling at all. Little to no babbling by 12 months or later is just one of the possible signs of autism in children. Learn more at autismspeaks.org. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
Hey, welcome back out there. This is the second half of the first hour of China Watch Radio. And we are watching China today. We've been through a few stories there to kind of set the mood as to where we see things popping up in the world. And they are popping up in the world. Things are moving quickly. You know, I think about it, just 2 years ago, things were like, we were just steaming along as per normal. We weren't engaged, really. China was selling us all their stuff, and we were giving China all our cash. And then Trump stepped into the thing and said, wait a minute, this isn't fair. This isn't right. We're going to give our country away to China. And so he stepped up to the plate and put some conditions on doing trade with us, and China did not like those. And so that's when Trump was chased out of office.
Yep. It was just how China absorbed the tariffs and carried on business as usual.
I don't think they really absorbed the tariffs so much as they just sort of ignored the whole situation and acted like it was business as usual.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think what China did when Trump put tariffs on them was they called in all of their captives.
And there was a hailstorm in the media of like,
yes,
this will wreck the world. This will,
well, not only that, but Trump then became the ultimate devil.
Exactly.
To all of the media, all of the progressive or everything on the left, which was everything.
Well, he tipped the table over, right? He was he's like tipping the money changer tables over.
Yep.
Right.
There you go.
Everybody's source of income went
whoosh. So we're going to take up some more subjects here today, and we're going to start with Jonty going into our second half of our first half hour. And then the second hour, hour number 2 of China Watch Radio is all for you. And the question we have on the table for that hour-long segment is, if you were, playing three-dimensional chess with the CCP in Beijing, which country would you like to capture that you think would give you hegemony over the Pacific? You need one country. Which country would you most like to capture? And that's at the second hour, 831-47-1980. So get your dialing finger itchied up and ready to go.
Itchied up?
Itchied up. And then we'll go right now to Jaunty, who will lead us off for this half hour here.
Yeah, well, I came across an interesting article in a publication called Morning Consult. I say interesting. It's also probably one of the worst written that I've come across in a while. But they conducted a poll of Chinese adults and asked them a couple interesting questions. One of them is, they're asked if this is, do you believe this is true? Do you agree? Do you disagree? The rest of the world should show China more respect. Whopping 40% strongly agree with that statement. 21% somewhat agree. A 31% aren't sure, don't have an opinion, and then some fraction of something in the order of 2% disagree.
2%?
So, you want to know who those 2% are? Very brave.
Are those people in China?
Yes.
Okay.
This is of Chinese adults, mainland Chinese adults. Should China do more to stand up to foreign bullies? That's not a loaded question or anything. But we're looking at around 58% of Chinese adults think that China should do more to stand up to foreign bullies. That actually changes if you're referring specifically to the United States or not. The folks in China specifically want to see their government stand up to the United States, the foreign bully, and not the general sort of potential foreign bully that's not the United States. I find this sort of thing very interesting because in order to understand what's going on somewhere, it really helps to know what the folks there think, what's their worldview. And in that regard, we've certainly got a lot of work to do because from the perspective of most Chinese, the U.S. is this belligerent country that is sending arms and giving diplomatic, protection to these insurrectionists, quote unquote, in Taiwan, for instance. And then they really see the United States as being the country that's creating all sorts of tension in the South China Sea. It's not China building a variety of military bases. They're spending $200 billion a year at least on their military. It's the U.S.
Jaunty, did you say that the article was poorly written?
They keep going on about how if you're an investor in Taiwan or in China, or if you're a foreign national living in China, you should really just stick to China for now. There's no reason to be overly concerned. They keep reiterating that Xi's not going to do anything dramatic on the world stage until after his bid at re-election or reselection.
After he becomes emperor. The reason...
Yeah, they didn't really provide any evidence to that. They just sort of said that. When you sort of say something like, of course people know, people are saying, instead of providing actual evidence for something, they were just sort of suggesting things. I did find this little tidbit interesting. In 2021, the United States accounted for 1/6 of Chinese exports, which is roughly equivalent to about 4% of China's gross domestic product. So that just gives you a kind of conceptual sense of how important the U.S. economy is to China. Vice versa is not true at all. One
of the reasons I asked the question about the quality of the writing, was because if you watch a lot of YouTube videos, one of the weird things we're seeing now are computerized voices.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And so it's like you get these artificial intelligence microchips and put them in a computer, and you tell the computer to be this person and say these things and think about what to say too. so you're watching these videos going, this is really shit. My wife says, I can't stand that voice because
it's not human.
It's not a human voice.
It doesn't take the same kind of breaths and pauses.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it doesn't sound right. Inflection's all over the place.
Yeah, really weird. So
we have a traffic report. I just want to let folks know that Highway 1 is stop and go from Mesa Drive to Carpenter. That's down in Monterey County. That's northbound Highway 1. Stop and go from Mesa Drive to Carpenter. So if you're traveling there, patience. Pull out the patience.
Yeah, turn up the radio and relax.
Enjoy China Watch.
Enjoy some China Watch radio. So, David, you're up.
Well, I found this story very fascinating.
Is this the PSYOPs story?
This is the PSYOPs one. So, Chinese troops find a food package dropped by a drone from mainland China. And I found
That's in Taiwan.
This in Taiwan. Dropped from mainland China, this drone came and it dropped a package, and it was some food. And what I found fascinating about this
what did the note say?
Well, the island's defense ministry said the package was found on Lilu, a small island that's only 5 kilometers from the mainland of Xiamen. The video posted on the Chinese social media network Weibo shows a man putting together a package and a note addressed to Taiwanese troops. Dear Taiwanese troops. The package includes Chinese egg tea and a Szechuan-style pickled vegetable in a package. It was all just prepackaged food. And it was carried by a civilian drone that flew from the mainland, according to Chinese media reports. The package is suspected to have been dropped by this unidentified drone, the minister said, although, without stating that it had come from the mainland, although they determined that was the case because of the initiation of the video. But they had spotted a pair of drones actually flying over the area. And Taiwanese military, they're going to take strong measures against these drones, and that they endanger the civilian and military safety and blah, blah, blah by dropping objects. But to me, this smells a lot like a test run.
There you go.
It smells like...
And thus the PSYOPs.
Because one of the things we had talked about on the show over time, and I think, Billy, you brought this up a couple of times, was fleets or flocks of drones.
Yes.
Coming in and attacking. And this almost seems to be kind of a test run of something like that. And I also noticed that it was a civilian drone, and they had a civilian in the video. So, hey, guys, I know nobody in an army uniform putting this together. So you've got all this plausible deniability to test the defensive network of Taiwan and its outer ring islands.
Now, does mainland China have an equivalent of FedEx?
With the drone delivery, yeah.
Did I not hear recently that Taiwan shot down a Chinese drone?
Well, they've been shooting them down. In fact, they're going to get some additional capability from the U.S. to look at this more as a military force, as opposed to a one-off incursions of airspace. But I thought the note was kind of interesting, along with this wrap package and the food that had this letter. And the letter said, "Hello, Taiwan compatriots."
同志们,
exactly. We are sending our best and unaffordable. It said this. I don't know what they call it, unaffordable. It was funny. This like it's some really great gift, right? Like they're sending in gold ingots or something. These tea eggs and these pickled whatever. Greetings to the frontline defenders. A mocking reference to previous Taiwan television showing the mainland people cannot afford, these two types of food. It added, people on, this is really weird, this is kind of creepy, if it wasn't already. People on both sides of the strait are always one family.
大家都一样.
Exactly. The question is, was this a civilian prank? Or is it really the test of island defenses with plausible deniability?
Or does China have something like FedEx? Maybe they're trying to deliver stuff to Taiwan.
And just some good person over there.
I think it's both with respect to your question.
Yeah, I do too.
I think it's both a practice,
test run.
A test run, sure.
Yeah.
And
Well,
furthermore, there is nobody in China who does not belong to the People's Liberation Army.
That's true.
So,
by definition.
by definition,
You know, and the difference between a military and a civilian drone is oftentimes the paint scheme.
yeah, there you go.
Well, there are some really nifty, long-running civilian drones now.
Fantastic.
They're really,
like an aircraft.
yeah, they
And
really
you
are.
know, the Chinese are very adept at psyops. And
really
I
are.
think, I remember the day, as a matter of fact, that China sent a cargo ship across the Pacific Ocean, and they crashed it on the beach at Half Moon Bay, disgorging lots of Chinese people.
Yeah.
It's like an artillery.
Oh, I remember
shell.
that. That's right.
It's like
Yeah.
an artillery shell that exploded on the beach.
Yeah.
Shortly thereafter, Clinton signed them into the World Trade Association.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning.
The WTO, that was the huge
That was the beginning.
rocket sled ride to their
Yep.
converting our hard currency to their military.
There you go. Interesting. Billy Graff.
Okay, so, you know, I spent some time in the South Pacific, and the president has announced in the coming days after the Solomon Islands asked countries not to send naval vessels to that South Pacific nation until approval processes are overhauled. A United States Coast Guard cutter and an Australian ship were denied access to the Solomon Islands to Guadalcanal area. Now, the White House has announced that the president will host Pacific Island leaders in Washington later this month amid growing worries about why the United States and Western allies are up against Chinese activity in that region. Now, the reason I'm so fascinated by this particular discussion is when I lived in Palau, which is not too far away, the United States made an agreement with Palau, and while I was living there, the existing runway was expanded to be able to handle a C-5A or bigger. And that's a long, big, impressive runway.
Yeah.
Okay? And the United States sends the island nation of Palau a pile of money every year as a holding chip.
Yeah, keep her swept off for us.
Yeah, because if something happens to Guam or something happens to Okinawa, then Palau becomes the United States backup.
Yeah.
Okay? So I saw this, I witnessed it. The Seabees built that runway. I watched them do it. Okay? So when you talk about the islands that Biden has asked the island nation representatives to Washington to have this talk about the region.
I think there's a dozen countries.
Here's the list of nations. Are you ready? Micronesia, the Marshall Islands, Palau, Nauru, Kiribati, Papua New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, Samoa, Tuvalu, Tonga, and Fiji.
Whoa.
That's a lot of... Well, that is the entire South Pacific.
Yeah.
Basically. There's a few other islands.
Not all.
Not all, but most.
It's an impressive network.
So,
Yeah.
So the announcement comes days after the Solomon Islands asked countries not to send naval vessels to their island until they get some documents figured out, basically. Basically, what they're trying to do is they're asking ships not to show up until they sign all the dots and T's on the agreement with China.
No meddling allowed.
Okay. The United States and Great Britain are among the countries concerned about the new security pact with Beijing that may lead to a Chinese naval base being constructed less than 2,000 kilometers from Australia.
Whoa.
Now, here's some interesting stuff that happened today. The Queen of England died. Now we got a new, quote, air quotes, head of state.
not really. He's not the head of state.
Well,
He's
no.
the king.
Well, let me put it to you this way. when Parliament wants to do something, the first person they ask permission is whoever's running Great Britain. And for the last 70 years, it's been the Queen.
Well, we got a new prime minister.
That's right.
And we've got a new king. Back
so,
to back.
So I'm not, look, I'm just making a supposition here.
Yeah.
But it seems to me that there is an opportunity for China to take advantage of some situations that are taking place in the South Pacific.
I'm always amazed at how we've, I don't know if ignored is the right word, but we haven't paid enough attention to a lot of these small countries in the South Pacific. I think we took a lot for granted.
That's right.
I remember when I was a teenager, I was reading a young adult. Remember the old magazine Soldier of Fortune?
Oh, sure.
I used to love just picking that up once in a while and reading. They had this one section in the center called the World Situational Report, right? And they were showing the Civil War in Guadalcanal. And then, of course, they had this amazing photo expose of, people who lived there, and they were having a lot of them had American weapons, and they were
Melanesian people.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I just thought, how would we let this go on? I thought, with all the sacrifice and the strategic importance, I thought, why would we let turmoil like this carry forward and not?
Well, I looked last night when I got the information about what I was going to talk about today. I went to Google Maps, and I brought up Palau on the Google map. Mm-hmm. And I looked at my old high school, and I looked where I lived, and I looked at, right? It is like looking at Waikiki. It's modern, it's cosmopolitan, they're brand new hotels, it's
a lot of economic
paradise.
Development.
It's paradise.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. Because we are so closely related economically and militarily with this little island in the middle of nowhere, it strikes me that China's attempting to do the same thing in the Solomon Islands.
Sure.
Yeah. By the way, Bill, I just love the fact that you live there. I mean, the experience you have for the firsthand accounting. What life was like.
Well, look, we watched this. The largest construction company in the world, Mitsui Modoc, it was a Korean company. They could not build this runway. They tried. They got about a third of it paved, and they couldn't get it done. They weren't going to fulfill the contract. It wasn't going to happen. And a civil action team from the United States Navy Seabees built that runway.
Go Navy.
They built that runway by themselves with one grader and 2 dump trucks, and it's beautiful.
Wow.
Okay, so I'm going to finish up this segment with a piece out of the Washington Examiner by Joel Girk, and it's datelined Taipei, Taiwan. So the Taiwan people are saying the Chinese are talking with Nicaragua about potentially setting up a naval outpost there. So they have a large strategic plan in place. What are we talking about today? We're playing, 3-dimensional chess here. So here we are.
We're playing checkers.
Why the hell would China be interested in setting up a post here? I suppose for the same reason we have a post there. And but in terms of strategic positioning, if China can do to Nicaragua what it's doing to Cambodia, the Solomon Islands, Sri Lanka, and on and on and on, then it will have the face of having conquered and captured a base in our backyard.
And let's not forget that a Chinese company is running and modernizing the Panama Canal.
That's right.
So we become a really important wing, right? I mean, an outer edge, right, for their Blue Ocean Navy to refuel and resupply.
It's right there. We're right here. Absolutely. So, what do the people in Nicaragua say? Well, no, we're not going to become another outpost of China. But in fact, that's what they're negotiating.
Yeah.
And the negotiations are a bit slow right now because they haven't figured out who will pay for the building of this new port. And of course, China wants to loan money to Nicaragua. Why? Because Nicaragua is not going to pay it back.
No, they got lint in their pockets and they pulled them out, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And so China will then take over the port, as it has, as it's doing in Cambodia, as it has done in Sri Lanka, and is doing in the Solomon Islands. So it's quite an expansionist agenda, but it's using that ultimate weapon that it uses so well, which is the Belt and Road Initiative.
Money.
We loan people money, and we build stuff with it that they can sometimes use, but not always.
So I can imagine, I'm just going through the panoply of presidents who've been in the White House in my lifetime, and I'm imagining a few of them would take out a tennis racket and just bash them back to the other side of the ocean. I mean, why is this being allowed to happen?
Well, and ladies and gentlemen, that's really where we're going to be going in the full second hour. We're going to think like China, like the Chinese and the CCP in Beijing, who are sitting around looking at a Sichuan pickled peppers.
dropped from a drone.
Dropped from a drone. And they're looking at the world and thinking, what should we do next? What is the one nation that we can capture that will give us hegemony?
If they're sitting in Beijing and they're looking at a globe, and if the globe were a geopolitical chess game, what piece would they move where next?
Exactly. And what would be, if I'm on that team thinking about where to move next, I'm wondering about the United States of America. Because as we sit here in Beijing, we're just running amok over the United States of America. We're opening up bases everywhere. And what is the United States of America going to do? They're going to host people in Washington, D.C. Now, what on earth is President Joe Biden going to tell these people?
Good question. The other thing I found fascinating about the Nicaragua story, with China potentially taking over, is this the same chess set with the same pieces? They're dealing with Daniel Ortega.
He makes a joke about this, but it's sort of true.
Yeah.
The Chinese are playing three-dimensional chess like you saw in Star Trek, and we're playing checkers.
But, in the Reagan administration in the 80s, we were dealing with Russia trying to get a toehold in Nicaragua, working with Daniel Ortega. Fast forward, 2022, we've got China working with Daniel Ortega to get a foothold in Latin America.
And you know what? I would really like to open up our second hour of conversation to people of the liberal or progressive persuasion. Because nobody, they don't seem to want to talk about China.
I do.
But they'll have good insights. I'd like to hear them.
Because you're not a progressive, Billy.
Well, I'm a registered Democrat, and I still want to talk about it because I think it's important.
Yeah, I do too.
Well, I would welcome, please, all of you people of the liberal persuasion, call us up and tell us we're nuts.
All right. Want to remind folks that Jonty's put an awful lot of work in our website, ChinaWatchRadio.com. Go there. Check out our show notes. All the articles we talk about are there. Please see this. It will help you understand what we're doing here. Hour number 2 is on the way.
831-479-1080.
This is KSCO Santa Cruz, Salinas, Monterey. Stick around. We'll be back in a couple minutes. Report of a fire on Highway 152 at Salachi Way. That's in Monterey County. I'm not too sure where this is, but any report of a fire these days is not good news, so be careful. That's some of what's happening this afternoon. The weather forecast for today, hot. Followed by more hot. Followed by increasingly hot.
It's going to be nice.
It'll be nice. Tonight it'll cool off, but in places like Gilroy and Ben Lomond, it's fairly uncomfortable this afternoon in parts of our listening area. So I'm not really making a joke of it. I'm just sort of pointing out the fact that it is somewhat uncomfortable. That's the latest national news, traffic, and weather from the KSCO newsroom. Time now for hour number 2 of China Watch Radio. China Watch Radio is brought to you in part by Sushi Market Sprouts on 7th in Santa Cruz and Kaito in the Capitola Mall Food Court. Treat yourself to the finest Japanese cuisine you'll find anywhere with fresh sushi to go and delicious ramen dinners. Sushi Market Sprouts and Kaito. Yum!
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, those are Chinese war drums, and they're being heard rumbling across the Pacific Ocean, where China has indeed drawn a line in the water. We want it all, and they're going to do what they can to take it all. That's what the Taiwanese people are saying. They're going to take the world, and they're going to enforce their way of thinking on the world. And you know, when it gets right down to what we've learned here on China Watch Radio, is that they are developing the technologies to enforce the way they think on everybody. They give you a cell phone. They give you 3 banners. If you've been good, bad, or
Indifferent.
You know, good, bad, or
supportive
on
or
the watch list, you know.
Yeah.
And if you've been bad, they'll turn you off. You can't buy food.
Well, and it's amazing, too. They have the sensors across the network of their society to understand and know exactly what you're doing when you're doing it. We're talking about recording keyboard strokes on applications, right? But they can see and listen and watch you in so many ways that we've reported here over the last few months for our regular viewers.
And they've been collecting us as well.
Exactly. And I think we would be remiss on our program if we did not point out the fact that as much as Chinese is out there trying to capture the world and doing it, we've sort of been doing the same thing ourselves.
Sure.
Around the world, just like Great Britain did for a while there. That's why they call it the British Empire.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not the first to see this happen.
Yeah.
You know, the difference, though, Billy, is that we don't seem to want an empire.
That's correct.
In the same respect. We want to have friends, but we do not enforce our thought or our government forms on them.
Well, I don't know if I'd agree with that.
Let's
if
see
you look,
I'm trying to get a Democrat to call.
Yeah, see, I don't think that's the case. I mean, Manuel Noriega is a pretty bad example of us forcing, a dictatorship on that region. I can think of some others. We backed Ferdinand Marcos for a very long time, and Ferdinand Marcos was a very bad man.
Ooh, and speaking of strategic assets.
Yeah, but with Marcos, though, wasn't that what Colin Powell talked about? Sometimes you had to shake hands with a few pigs, right?
Well, we had Subic Bay, we had Clark Air Base, we had, but we were really embedded in the Philippines for a very long time, and Ferdinand Marcos, But
would you argue, though, that the United States negotiated with him straight up, and we paid him a hell of a lot of money, pardon my French, for the access rights to those bases? We didn't take it at a gunpoint, and we didn't try to change the Philippines either.
What killed the American military presence in the Philippines was Mother Nature. Subic Bay went down with Mount Pinatubo blew up,
But that's a good case in point about this difference between chess and checkers.
Yeah, exactly.
So we see China taking over a naval base by loaning the country money that they can't pay back.
But how's that different from us paying the Philippines a boatload of money to do the same thing?
Because we rent the property.
Okay, but
and
what's the Philippines going to do with it? What's the Philippines going to do with a Clark Air Base when we go away?
They wanted us
give
gone
it to China
as well.
That's right.
We left, though, and they actually wanted us back, right?
Yeah.
Because the Chinese weren't, infilling islands off the coast of the Philippines when we were there.
I think Jonty has a good point, a good perspective on this. I was hoping he'd jump in here.
Let's have Jonty give his good perspective.
Well, I think the list of countries that the United States has
co-opted.
Pinochet comes to mind. Iran had a democratically elected government that wanted to nationalize British oil, and the CIA installed a horrible dictator there.
The Shah of Iran.
Iraq, and all the wonderful things that we did for their country over the last 20 years comes to mind also. The human rights abuses and death toll in Iraq is something that I don't know if any other country in the world can come close to. You hear about all the horrors visited on the Ukrainians, but you don't hear about anything that's been happening in Yemen.
Right, but in Iraq, though, it was a really serious proxy war between Iran and the United States, and people didn't really capture that.
I think Jonty's making the point that we can point the finger as much as we want, but we still have to understand that we have sometimes not acted in the best of faith around the world ourselves.
I agree with that. We make mistakes. There's no question about we make mistakes. But in the wake of Iraq, though, there is a democratically elected government. Right, they've had several elections since.
Well, don't be fooled by the illusion of choice. You can have a democratically elected government that has absolutely nothing to do with representing the people of a country.
Like Nicaragua,
like China,
like Nicaragua,
yeah.
And
we saw that in Afghanistan for near on 20 years. Karzai was a scion of Unocal. And Goldman Sachs, and he'd never really even lived in the country, but yet he was democratically elected.
Yeah.
So you can call the country a democracy. I mean, we have our problems here, but actually, I believe it was Nicaragua? I think it might have been. No, it was Panama. Panama had
Manuel
Panama
Noriega
had a situation where. Noriega was running for office.
That's
Noriega
right.
had $4 million to spend on his campaign, and his opponent, favored by the U.S. State Department, had something like $14 million to run their campaign. And all of that money came from the United States. So, I mean, there's democracy and there's democracy.
Yeah. It's a fight. It's a fight for everybody, and the line has been drawn in the water, where it appears now that it is West against the East, or at least America against China, and it's now an unequivocal contest. Or do you not see it that way, Jonty?
And I see it as a very much a contest, no doubt about that.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be Pollyannish about that at all, but I also am just wary of blanket statements where if the United States does something truly horrible to a country, it's because we made a mistake. It's not because of a long pattern of imperial-style abuse.
Yeah, and that's the only reason I brought up your point of view on this subject, because you and I have talked about it off the air several times. We
you guys are conspiring.
No, we try to do we in the United States try to do a good job of being good citizens around the world, but we occasionally falter really badly.
So but let's circle back to our line in the water here before we get off onto that one forever. We do have a contest in the Pacific, and it's not just in the Southwest Pacific.
No.
It's throughout the entire Pacific Ocean. We now have, and again, once again, a shameless plug for Tales from a Tin Can, in which my wife Marlene made these incredible maps. On page 21, you can see what Japan's sphere of influence was like in 1941, and then on page 85, the whole Western Pacific in 1 year,
and to think that if you think that might not happen again, you're sadly mistaken.
That's right. So China has been very adept at the concept of unrestricted warfare, wherein you fight, but you fight without guns and bullets. And that's what they're so good at. So that's what we wonder as we sit in Beijing playing three-dimensional chess with the Chinese. So we ask you, if you're sitting there with us, which country would you most like to capture in order to guarantee your hegemony over the Pacific Ocean?
I can't wait for the answer from our first caller today. A caller who calls us every once in a while on the program when she has something astute to say, and that's Mary. Mary from Santa Cruz, you're on China Watch Radio.
Hello, gentlemen. How you doing?
Terrific.
Some of us are gentlemen, not all of us, though.
Well, listen. And this is going to insult many listeners and perhaps guests. But liberals love to jump on American colonization and just downplay it. I mean, Obama just loves to do it. There are many examples of this. But I suggest to you that we are at the bottom of the heap of those crappy nations that want to take over the world. And I would suggest to you that we have nothing to do with trying to take over the Pacific Ocean or anything else as it's been done for many generations, many wars. It doesn't matter what you want out there in the Pacific, whether it's oil, fish, it doesn't matter. The U.S. is at the bottom of the heap of the crappy countries that are trying to dominate the world. And they always have been.
Wait a minute, Mary, what do you mean by bottom of the heap?
They are defenders of constitutions that protect the people. And I guarantee you, I don't care who you are, you cannot find us at the top of the heap at dominating any of those countries. We're not interested.
Well, that was the subject of some contention here earlier, a few minutes ago. But I would certainly have to agree with you that we are the one country in the world that at least pretends to champion civil rights of individuals. I mean, China
and we also
is
protect
exactly
other
the
countries.
opposite of that.
We also protect other countries.
With the freedom of the seas,
right,
backed by the power of the U.S. Navy.
Yeah, but I think Mary's right. I don't think we try to dominate anybody.
Well,
now, wait, gentlemen. It has been said on this radio show how crappy the U.S. is and how much history they have. I guarantee you, we are nothing compared to the countries who are trying to take over the world and to garner control. We're nothing.
Would you say that country that you're referring to would be China? Would they fit into those people who are trying to take over the world?
Absolutely. I mean, whether it's Russia or China or even Japan.
Yeah, Japan back in the day was pretty brutal.
And Germany, I mean, we have no track record like those countries.
That is true.
I just am so upset every time I hear this crap about colonization by the United States. Come on, people.
Okay, Mary, you ripped this one, I guess. Thank you very much for calling. Really appreciate it. On China Watch Radio, and this is Billy pushing all the buttons all over the place.
Well, because David wanted to say something and he wasn't turned on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, I think Mary makes a good point.
No, Mary does make a good point, and it's easy to point at the failings of the United States. We have a lot, but one thing I do like about the United States, and I'm trying not to speak as an American, I'm trying to just speak as a world citizen, is that there is a corrective feedback loop in the United States that you don't see with level of transparency. If you do a lot across a lot of Western countries, but particularly the United States, with the consistent set of elections that we have, and the zeitgeist of the electorate.
Yeah, institutional revolution.
And we have an open conversation. You can't have an open conversation in China about whether or not we should take, if we should conquer a country or not, right?
Yeah.
If we go to war in this country, there's a pretty vicious debate about...
Yeah, and we don't take going to war lightly.
No.
Kenny in Watsonville wants to talk to us. Kenny, you're on China Watch Radio.
Hi, guys. So you ask what country would be optimal for the U.S. to control or
No, China. Pretend you're sitting on the CCP executive committee in Beijing, and you're playing.
Who do you want to go after?
Yeah, who do you want to go after to ensure your hegemony? Which country would be most valuable to you?
If you're China.
It would be the same for both China and the United States to control the Philippines. The Philippines, their geographical location, their past friendship with the United States, and it would be one of those chess moves that not only got China something, but it denied the U.S. something, and that's a twofer.
So, Kenny, do you think do you think we need to strengthen our relationship then with the Philippines?
Well, absolutely. We should have done that a long time ago, but Duterte was not really amenable to that. Now, the new Marcos,
it's Marcos and Duterte now because the vice president is Duterte's daughter.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you have the worst of both worlds.
And that's why China would go after them because, there's some corruption in there and they could benefit, they could do their little elite capture and all that stuff.
There you go.
And you're asking why why the United States isn't really doing anything to stop a lot of this nonsense that's been going on now for years.
Yeah.
And I would have to say things like Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, Eric Swalwell, Dianne Feinstein, major media in the United States, education, military-industrial complex, big pharma, big sports, big entertainment, Silicon Valley, major retailers like Amazon, Walmart, Costco. There's a lot of elite capture going on, folks.
So you're suggesting that all of these are among the elite that have been captured by China. And with that much juice, nobody in the U.S. government's going to make any move to stop China from taking over the world.
Well, it's too lucrative, isn't it? Kenny, do we have that right?
Oh, yeah, it's lucrative, and then they have people in positions of power. And in addition, it's not just the money, though. There are some many committed ideologues that are like, they're what people call one-worlders or global community. They're really committed to that cause. So you not only have money and power, but you have these folks that are zealots, and they want to change the world to fit their program.
Well, you mentioned zealot, though. I mean, in your opinion, it seems like the one guy who did kind of step forward and try to push back on this was Trump, and he just got eviscerated by all the people you just mentioned and all the organizations you just mentioned. I mean, do you think that's the case?
Oh, absolutely. That's why they couldn't allow him to remain in office, because he was antithetical to everything that they're trying to get done. And that, that's the deep administrative state, that's the swamp, that's everything that Trump was saying. If you go back and listen to Trump's inaugural speech, you'll be amazed. It's short and sweet, and Obama and Bush and a couple of other presidents are sitting there looking on, and you can see them get noticeably uncomfortable when he's saying what he's saying. And
Kenny, as part of that, do you think one-worlders would prefer a government like China, a centralized government where all the power is in us Politburo members as we sit in Beijing? Do you think that would be a much more attractive group of people to associate with than, a bunch of irascible
free thinkers?
Well, yeah, it would be a much less complex, very simple. You just go to the one guy and say, hey, here's what we want. And here's how we can make a deal. We can cooperate. You can have this aspect of the world, and we'll take this aspect of the world. And basically they're making the United States weak by doing like this central bank digital currency thing. It's actually happening. People don't realize that this thing is in motion. the same kind of digital currency that China is using. The United States is, with the Federal Reserve, is on track to get that through. And I think they're only waiting till after this election.
You're right. They are working on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think they think that this red wave is not going to happen. I think they have something up their sleeve for an October surprise that's going to take the wind out of everybody's sails. They're going to use things like the abortion issue and things that are wedge issues to divide us all again and make the election really a lot closer.
Oh, you mean play politics?
Well,
yeah.
Cynical
you know,
politics.
when you bring up the concept of wedge issues, it seems like if you're trying to build a country, you see wedge issues as dangerous because you're using the wedge issues are those issues that are designed to split people apart.
To derail you, to
right?
divert
Well, that's
your
what
thinking.
politics is.
Now, well, wait a minute. No. If you're trying to build up a country, you turn your back on those wedge issues.
That's
but
right.
if you're trying to destroy a nation, you use all of the wedge issues you can to create bigger cracks and separate people.
Complete distractions.
Yeah, but I mean, if you go back and look at the last presidents you can remember in this country when the elections have come up, it's been pretty divisive.
That's how far back this goes, Billy.
Yeah, and
This whole thing
that's what I'm
goes
trying
way
to.
back.
I know it does. Hey, Kenny, thanks for the call. We got a board full of people who want to talk as well.
Thanks, Kenny.
Can I say one last thing?
Sure.
It's just, instead of wedge issues, Americans need to go by principles.
Oh, there's a good point.
Well, that's a good way to close out, Kenny.
Yep. Thank you.
2 points there.
Yep. He scored. That was a big. That was a 3-pointer.
That was a swisher. Yeah.
That was a 3-pointer.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to John in Aptos. You're on China Watch Radio.
Hey, John.
Yes. Thanks. I heard Leon Panetta. He was on the national news broadcast this morning, and I don't always agree with him, but at least if I was going to play ping pong or pool with Leon Panetta, I would think, and I've met some of his family members over the years. I'm a farmer. They're agricultural people. At least the pool table or the ping pong table would be level, and we would battle it out. The problem is with Trump and Ben and all these people, they don't want to play not only with that non-level table, they want to blow the table up.
Who does?
What do you guys think about that?
Who are you talking about?
Who wants to blow the table up?
Who wants to blow the table up?
Trump. I mean, he just doesn't want to play by the rules.
Oh. Well, thank you for telling us that.
Appreciate the call.
Appreciate
Thank
the
you.
call.
Let's move on to Dan in Pacific Grove. Let's make sure I punch the right button. Dan in Pacific Grove, you're on China Watch Radio.
Good afternoon, everybody. I believe a question that was posed was, which country would Japan capture?
No, which country would China like to capture?
Yeah.
China. I'm sorry, I just misstated that. And I thought about that for a moment as I was walking out the door. I think United States.
Well, that's the checkmate move, isn't it?
You know what though? He thought of it first. That's actually pretty close to being what it is.
That's the checkmate move. That's the end game. Yeah.
And it seems like you hit it on the head there.
As a single power, the only nation presently capable of resisting the force of China. And I think it's not useful to think of capture in a traditional sense of Chinese military occupying our territory, taking a flag away. I think capture in a way that's, I believe, well underway, which is making the U.S. ineffectual, compromising institutions.
It's a 21st century form of puppeting.
You know, Dan, I agree with most of what you said. The only part I disagree with is I think there's some nations in the world who cannot be captured by China right now. I think Germany's probably one of them. Finland, Sweden.
I think that's true. As far
New
as
England, Old England.
You made a great comment about it doesn't have to be with guns and bullets.
Absolutely.
In 1999, 2 Chinese intelligence officers in the Air Force published a book called Unrestricted Warfare.
Yes.
Essentially, it was just an update of Sun Tzu's Art of War.
Mm-hmm.
How does the weak compete with the strong and win? Well, you don't do it with using the same kind of weapons. You have to come at it with a different way. So China has been using those different kinds of ways, like you say, by corrupting institutions and people. With what?
And currency, economy, flooding a country with drugs, weakening the society.
Yeah, very good point. That's a very good point. Hey, Dan, we appreciate the call. Thank you. We got to go to our break.
Great call.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Really was good. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll
What's
pay
the
some
phone
bills.
number? 831-479-1080.
What's that number again?
831-479-1080.
We'll be right back. Satisfy your hunger with a fresh, prepared, twice daily grab-and-go sushi you'll find waiting for you at Sushi Market Sprouts, 2 blocks from the beach at 300 7th Avenue in Santa Cruz. Fresh, delicious, and oh so good.
Hello, I'm Junko, and I look forward to serving you at the Sushi Market Sprouts.
It's the 2022 California International Air Show, October 8th and 9th. After 11 years, the Canadian Snowbirds jet team perform at the Salinas Airport. Experience the power of the latest Air Force fighter jet, the F-35A Lightning II. For the first time in Salinas, the world's fastest jet fire truck. Don't miss the dueling monster trucks. And backed by demand, the Wall of Fire. The California International Air Show. Get your tickets today at salinasairshow.com.
History this rich must be preserved, and the best way to preserve it is to attend the Monterey Historical Society's 89th anniversary celebration barbecue on September 8th from noon to 4 at the historic Baranda Adobe in Salinas. Enjoy a delicious tri-tip meal with baked beans, salad, garlic bread, and libation. Music by the Trail Ride Band, opportunity drawing, book sale, cakewalk, and flea market. Tickets $40 for adults, $10 for children at the Adobe, and all proceeds go to preserving Monterey County's rich history.
Hi, I'm Sam Quinn for Coast Paper and Supply. Founded over 60 years ago, Coast Paper and Supply continues to be the one-stop local supply source for businesses, large and small, school districts, special events, and for your home. Their 1,800 square foot showroom is huge, and it's packed with everything from paper and janitorial supplies to whatever you need for shipping and packing, no matter if you're moving your business or your home across town. They've even got motel-hotel amenities, disposable food service items, and even eco-friendly cleaning supplies. Discover for yourself why many local businesses, schools, and people go to Coast Paper and Supply for selection, low prices, and great customer service. You can find Coast Paper and Supply at 151 Josephine Street, open 8 to 4:30 weekdays. You can shop online at coastpapersupplyinc.com or give them a call at 831-423-3350.
You took a new job in Texas. No problem. Store your stuff at Anbar Self-Storage in U-Haul. Easy off Highway 1 on Airport Boulevard by the airport. 24-hour security. Spring cleaning special. First month free. Store it at Anbar Self-Storage and U-Haul in Freedom. Clean it out, pack it up, and drive it right to your door at Anbar Self-Storage and U-Haul. Easy off Highway 1 on Airport Boulevard by the airport. 24-hour security, 24/7 access. Spring cleaning special. First month free. Store it at Anbar Self-Storage and U-Haul in Freedom.
I love this song! I love nachos.
Loving everything? You might be buzzed.
You know what I'd love? A ride when it's time to head out.
If you see a buzzed warning sign, call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the final half hour of this edition of China Watch Radio, The Line in the Water. The question on the table today is, which country in the Pacific do you think China needs to establish its hegemony? We've had some great callers with some great points of view. And, Billy, who do you have next?
We have Mike in Santa Cruz. Mike, you're on China Watch Radio. Thanks for calling.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. As I was listening in and you guys were talking about, somebody wanting to build a country or by their contrasting actions tear one down. And I don't know if you guys have heard the Novus Ordo Forum, but it's New Order of the Ages, and you have to be able to cause chaos in something before you can collapse it to build something else. And I think that's what worked with some of what's going on is we have lip service to politicians saying they're for the United States, but in the deeper desire for a new world order, many have infiltrated offices of public service in the government that do want to tear down any old foundation of the constitutional republic and replace it with a new society. And I think that's what we're dealing with. Do you guys know about
with respect to that, President Obama promised to fundamentally transform America. But he never said what he wanted to fundamentally transform America into. And so I think about that a lot. And I wonder if what I see going on in Washington, D.C. and everywhere, in San Francisco or Los Angeles or Chicago or everywhere, isn't the deconstruction of America. And once it's deconstructed, what is it going to be transformed into? Nobody says that.
You know what's fascinating is I worked with a woman. She was an acquaintance of mine, and she was a devout communist by her own, statement. And she was talking about how you take over a society, and you can start at cities, and you can start at city governments. And she said you actually need a very small percentage of activists involved in government to bring things down. You can seed people in planning departments, and you seed people in parks and recreation departments. And it's amazing, she says, once you get established in a government, how you can move around and start to establish and recruit people to come in behind you.
Hire your friends.
But it was really fascinating. She said, if you can win over 3% of the population, you can actually bring a city down towards.
And the reason that is because we live in we have so much power because we're theoretically free, right?
Yeah.
But look at how few people actually vote.
Yeah.
I think the last election was 24%, if I remember right.
So, that's a very interesting notion. We've been talking about an island in the Pacific, but there are islands in society, too.
Oh, sure.
Now, a question for the caller. If you wanted to capture a part of American culture that would help you gain hegemony over that culture, where would you start?
Yeah, Mike.
Academia.
I'd say probably we're one people purportedly out of many different cultures, but I would say, without trying to pick on any particular ethnic group, those that are more geared towards a socialist kind of conditioning, or in that situation, if matriarchy is married with socialism and government is the mother, then you have a propensity for being conditioned for government to be in the middle of everything, social services, government-funded housing, and in that situation, that begins to be where the foundation can crumble, because you don't have a responsible people pioneering the livelihood of the things God made for, planting seed, cultivating, harvesting. Government's in the middle of all of that, and I think it would take basically an education of any group to go like, what are your freedoms that are God-given? Do you recognize that those are for you to keep you from tyranny? If you don't, then you slip into the situation where the middleman will take over leadership, and that's the government.
So Mike, how do you just juxtapose that statement you just made with a country like Sweden, for example, where there's a lot of socialist type things going on, but generally the population in Sweden and Finland and countries like that, Denmark, are all pretty doggone happy with the way things are going?
Which is true, but until only recently. And one of the big reasons was because of the uniformity of the people of those countries.
I could answer that real quickly.
Go ahead.
Sure. That, we all have particular baggage as it relates to God. The best reality that I understand in my revelation about God is spirit, but there's been much misrepresentation. But this question about whether humanity has certain rights that are actually given by God, not granted by man, if we don't have any acknowledgement or room for acknowledging that certain rights come from God, that he wanted people to live free, not subjected to tyranny and cruelty, that then the only substitute for that is man created God, which is government. And I think subconsciously that's where it lies in the psyche deep, as if there's, God isn't spirit and he gives humanity certain unalienable rights or God-granted rights. If we don't leave room for that, we'll default unconsciously into allowing government to take the place of the one who's meant to be humanity.
That's another three-pointer.
Yeah, and I also heard a U.S. Senator recently say, we've got 2 million people coming over the border. We don't know who they are. They're undocumented, and a lot of them have very sad stories about their journeys. Yet we hired 87,000 IRS agents.
Yes.
Why didn't we hire 87,000 Border Patrol agents?
Well, and also the point you make too is good, David. The fact that in Sweden, Finland, and Denmark they don't have all those people trying to, come across the border all at once.
No, they're a very uniform culture. Mike, that was a great call.
Mike, that was a great call. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, let's move on to David in Watsonville. David, you're on China Watch Radio.
Yeah, very interesting first hour, and this is also...
Thank you.
Thank you. When I grew up, my mom and dad raised 8 of us, but we were told that you pick your friends carefully, because if you're in a car and something goes wrong when you're out with your friends and they come running back and say, oh, it's just that firecracker, and down the road you get pulled over and they shot somebody and killed them. You're an accomplice to murder, correct?
That's correct.
That's correct. Why? Nothing against Chinese people. I have some dear Chinese friends. But why are all us Americans buying our own death certificate? Everything in the stores are from China, and those people over there don't have luxury homes. The common people don't live and benefit from their paycheck. They get food to live and survive by. We are demising ourselves by buying this Chinese stuff.
Well, we had a guest on the program here a couple of months ago who was actually escaped. He was a Uyghur. Remember, he escaped the Xinjiang province. And to your point, anytime a Western factory was short of workers because of COVID, they would bring in Uyghurs as forced labor, trained forced labor, to backfill the factories. Now, not always did the Western factory realize that these were Uyghur slaves who were coming in. But their valuation of life is obviously very different than ours here in the West.
And this is also true with our environmental movement.
Yeah.
We get rid of all of our dirty industries.
We export
them to China.
And other countries.
Yeah. And principally China is where we've sent almost all of them.
Yeah.
And they have absolutely destroyed the environment of China. Yeah. And yet we feel very good about ourselves.
Well, and part of the way that they can actually collapse costs is not only the labor. People think about, the labor component. There's lots of Chinese workers, and so you've got wage compression.
Yeah.
But it's really the environmental, because as you're manufacturing, especially modern day products, the types of plastics we use and the microplastics that we hear about a lot, certainly a lot about how you make electronics has tremendous toxic waste and side effects to it. And they can just run that stuff literally. And I have a lot of friends who manage supply chains, and I've even got some family members who have deep understanding of supply chains in China. And they have no compunction. In fact, one gentleman actually he was an investigator for Western manufacturer. They were taking a toxic waste that a gram will kill a person. They were dumping this next to a playground up the street from the factory for an elementary school. They didn't care.
No. Well, and but who's responsible for that? Is it the Chinese? No.
Yeah.
We're paying them to do it.
Yeah.
This is on us as much as it is on them.
Yeah, and we're, like I said, we're not, look, you remember PG&E and Hinckley?
Yeah.
Remember the famous movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, okay, so, we're not above doing that either.
Well, and we took those movies.
Absolutely.
And we
highlighted them.
We became good because of them.
Yeah.
But what our goodness consists of is just shipping our never mind to China.
Yeah.
And then thinking well of ourselves because we're clean.
And yet we did to Flint, Michigan, what China's doing to itself.
But I can prove that, there's, issues with the manufacturing process. When you open a Chinese product, just in general, the off-gassing from it is tremendous from the chemicals they use. I was at Costco recently, and they had some furniture dressers and stuff that was manufactured in China. It had been sitting on the floor for a month and a half for sale because they had big boxes. I opened the drawer, and the off-gassing from this thing still, after a month and a half on the showroom floor, was absolutely tremendous.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Take a deep breath of your next made in China.
There you go. David, we appreciate the call. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, but the Constitution, it's of the people, by the people, and for the people, and we, the people, aren't doing our due diligence. We should be whipped.
He's making a point.
No, you got to pay attention. You're right, David.
Yeah,
making a good point. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That might be another three-pointer.
It might be another three. It's good swishers.
Wow,
a lot of three-pointers. Are we out of calls?
We're out of calls at the moment. If you want to call us...
831-479-1080. We have a few minutes left. We'd love to hear from you.
So the question on the table is what, Michael?
Well, yeah, the question on the table is that pretend you're with the CCP and you're sitting with the other members of the executive board of the CCP.
Yeah.
And you're looking at the Pacific and you're wondering which country...
Yeah, who do you want?
Yeah, who can we capture that would give us hegemony over the entire Pacific? But another thing that kind of pops into my mind as we've been going through this question is, what do you think, as a CCP member, of the efforts by the United States to stop you?
Yeah.
Do you see the United States doing anything to stop you?
Well, isn't that where China accuses us of being a bully?
Well, also,
yes.
I think the answer to Michael's last question, the most recent one, is yes. I think China does see us trying to stop them, slow them down. I think the whole thing in Solomon Islands is, a big indicator we're actually concerned. Yeah. This thing, the meeting with our current president and most every nation in the South Pacific.
This is all reactions.
Right, but look,
things that have been set in play.
But look at what happened.
Ago.
Look at what happened in World War II. We sat on our thumbs and didn't do anything until somebody bombed Pearl Harbor, and then we all went, "Uh-oh,
yeah,
we better stand up and do something now." But we were hesitant to do much of anything.
But so much of the world now is controlled with soft power.
Sure.
Than it is.
Yeah. We're being attacked on the internet. We're being,
Exactly.
I mean, it's scary.
That's exactly right. Soft power.
That's right.
Is the weapon of unrestricted warfare.
And it's a weapon of choice now. Yeah. Nobody wants to drop bombs on anybody. They just want to take over the cash banking system.
Yeah.
Follow the money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really think that we need to be much more diligent than we are.
Well, that's a point David brought up, which I really appreciated, his point about paying attention.
Yeah.
That we haven't. And we haven't really thought about the downstream consequences of, when we buy products,
Or when we vote.
Or
don't vote, for that matter. That 20% or whatever the number is, it was very low.
Yeah.
And look, when you have that little percentage of the population making the decisions...
Right.
That's not good.
I don't know. I think there's some people who vote that shouldn't.
It's not 20%. I think that you might be talking about the percent that ends up deciding an election. I think it's this last election, it was something in the order of about 60%.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that was one of the highest turnouts ever. I mean, there were preceding elections. I think the election that
Well, actually,
that Gore lost was, I think, there were 23 or 24%, if I remember right.
Yeah. Well, just this last election we just had in June had a low turnout. It was 24%.
24. Okay, I was right.
Yeah.
24% in California.
Yeah, and that was for the primaries and some of the ballot measures.
Okay, so 24% of the population making the decision for all of us is not good.
Well, that's a lot bigger than what is being done in China, where 6 people make the decision for
technically, though, they have an election. That's what Xi Jinping is coming up on in November, is technically an election. Technically. It's not real, but it's technically an election.
Yeah.
No. Well, that's curious. Is it an election or is it...
Well...
And that's the argument.
They have a constitution.
So
believe it or not.
What happened in Nicaragua was that Nicaragua was associated with Taipei, Formosa.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They had recognized Formosa. And the Daniel Ortega regime did. And then the United States, they had an election in Nicaragua, and the United States waltzed in and said, this is a phony-ass election. You guys are just...
Yeah.
You're cheating. Well, of course they're cheating. Duh. But Nicaragua then took offense, and they kicked the Taiwanese out of their embassy and gave it to
Mainland China.
Mainland China.
Yeah.
And so you accuse us of doing something, but probably, I would suspect, this is something that the Chinese have been working at a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's what I say with respect to the notion of they're playing three-dimensional chess.
Well, a little bit of history on Nicaragua, which I find fascinating, is, they had a civil war, right? There was a lot of fighting in Nicaragua. We were backing, other sides than Noriega. Eventually, enough pressure was put on Nicaragua by the United States to have an election. So they held an election, and I think Jimmy Carter and his folks who were monitoring elections at the time were monitoring it. And Ortega lost. It was not. It was a fairly decent margin. He lost, and so he thought about, I'm going to keep power. Well, President Carter sat down. I remember this interview because I remember Carter talking about this. He sat down with Ortega and says, "Look, you lost the election. It's important for the principles of the country and for you to have the authority and leadership. Look, you're a young man. Give up the office." He says, "Run again." He says, "Maybe wait a few years, build up, your foundation of support and run again." And that's exactly what he did. Yeah. And it was fascinating that, these years later, now he's back in power. But where are the people in our country when we used to lean forward into these things, where we would have the caliber of an ambassador like an ex-president come and mediate a situation so it was favorable for all parties?
Well, I'm just wondering what happened to our foreign service. I mean, we should have been cognizant of the fact.
Yes, Michael, yes.
What was our caller just saying? We're not paying attention?
Yeah, that's right.
We're not paying attention.
Well, my mom and dad, and actually it was my grandmother, my dad's mother, said that I should go into the diplomatic corps. She said when I was about 7, because they could send me somewhere and I could start a war.
Yeah,
because I was that kind of kid, right? And it's a joke now, kind of a family joke, but where is our foreign service?
Yeah. Oh. And it used to be fairly remarkable things. I had a friend I went to school with who was in the State Department. It was amazing the people that they would send to other countries to mediate. This one gal I used to know, she was sent with a couple of folks out to a small country in Africa, and they stopped a war that was brewing between 2 tribes.
Wow.
And it was heartwarming, this story, and these were just kind of middle level and lower level people. But they had incredible skills of diplomacy and negotiation, and they elevated both sides to be able to see, a mutual point of, got away from their contention to a mutual point of alignment.
To get there, you have to be paying attention.
Yes.
You have to be minding the store.
Yeah.
If you're not minding the store, people are going to.
But Michael, isn't it? But I thought the Soviet Union during the Cold War, though, was that force that kept us leaning into the wind. where we would look for any.
It was the foe.
Yeah, it was the foe, and so we would look for any early signal. Sure. And for us, if there was any daylight somewhere, we couldn't let them step in. And so we were very conscientious about stepping in. And some people say a harm, but I mean, largely we were trying to help.
And I think that's a very good point, because we haven't been paying attention for many, many years, decades. We watched China and said, we're going to help them. We're going to lift them out of their misery. We're going to give them all of our money, and they're going to become good citizens of the world. Yeah. But we never did factor in Mao Zedong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, once again, I think that's an indicator of how good the United States can be.
Yeah.
And at the same time, that goodness in us didn't allow us to see the badness in them.
Yeah.
Well,
it
allowed them to waltz right in the door, essentially, because
we want to think the best of people, not the worst.
Yeah.
And what a great deal it was for a lot of people. They got access to the largest market in the world.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. All they had to do is turn their back on America.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice way to put it.
Wow.
We're wondering if you want to get one last word in. 479-1080. We're coming up on the end of today's program. By the way, we'll be broadcasting live on Flight 1080, our next program, live from the boardwalk.
Yeah.
And it won't be inside it'll be outside.
So if you hear screaming, it's not in pain. Somebody's on the Giant Dipper.
And not only that, there's a great fresh breeze blowing, so you can enjoy the outside.
Yeah, nice.
Lots of great libations. The occasion is the Santa Cruz Area Chamber of Commerce Annual Business Expo. A great opportunity to meet the local business people. Everybody's looking for workers. Yeah. So there's lots of
opportunities. Isn't that the truth?
Yeah. But now, could you do something like that in China?
You could.
But how long would the gathering last?
5 minutes.
Yeah.
All right, let's, looks like we
have a caller.
Well, we have a call, but...
And we have a minute left, so here it is.
Well, let's
bring him up.
He's
another caller.
That's right, comes in waves.
Yeah.
All right, well...
Always at the end of the show, too.
Caller, our call screener's busy on another line. What's your name?
Downtown Al.
Hey, Al, how you doing?
Love that voice.
All right. Hey, I wanted to say something. A lot of people don't understand it, but I voted for Trump because I'm concerned about the environment. And even though I don't like everything that he might have done environmentally, overall, the idea of bringing manufacturing back to the U.S., or at least to responsible Western countries, is better for the environment.
Good point. And Al, thanks for calling. We're out of time, but that's a very good point.
That's another three-pointer.
Yeah, it's a three-pointer to end the show on. Thanks. Just a reminder, Flight 1080 is on the way. Let me get the station break in here. This is KSCO Santa Cruz, Salinas, Monterey.
Too much fun. 再见，好同志们。